I'd like to introduce moderator of our third panel, Jakub Wiech, Deputy Editor-in-Chief from Energetyka 24, co-organizer of our conference. Please come to us and invite your panelists.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jakub Wiech. I'm a Deputy Editor-in-Chief of Energetyka 24, which is the biggest Polish portal dedicated exclusively to energy issues, and also the co-organizer of today's event. And I will have a pleasure and an honor to host a panel dedicated to the issue that is in the center of our attention here in Brussels and also in any other capitals in Europe. And this issue is what is the impact of the energy crisis that we are going through right now on the European climate policy, on projects like Fit for 55? And I'm very happy that I will run this conversation with honorable guests, and I want to invite on the stage Ms. Alena Mastantuono, member of European Economic and Social Committee and delegate of the Czech Chamber of Commerce to EUROCHAMBRES. Please come on stage. I would like to also invite Mr. Grzegorz Tobiszowski, member of the European Parliament. We have on the screen Mr. Paweł Majewski, President of the Management Board of the Polish company ENEA. Hello, sir.
Dzień dobry, hello.
I would like to also invite on the stage Ms. Małgosia Rybak, Climate Change and Energy Director of CEPI. We also do have a connection with Mr. Piotr Sprzączak, Deputy Director of International Cooperation Department at the Polish Ministry of Climate and Environment. Hello.
Good afternoon, everybody. Dzień dobry.
Okay. Right, so I'm here. Okay, so we can now start the discussion, and I know that two of my guests are requested to leave a bit earlier, so I will start our panel with a question to Mr. Paweł Majewski, the president of ENEA, and I would like to ask you a question that stands. How do you think the energy companies in Poland and Europe look at the future of the European climate policy now taking into account the current energy crisis? How do you think they will try to suggest, to put some suggestions to the European regulator to somehow maybe change this whole structure, which is the European climate policy? I think that there is an issue regarding the audio transmission.
It's on your side.
Teraz?
Yes, now it's perfectly correct.
Szanowni Państwo, no, oczywiście polityka klimatyczna jest narzędziem co do zasady niezbędnym, potrzebnym. Zarówno my, jak i nasi klienci dostrzegamy konieczność zmniejszenia emisyjności naszego systemu energetycznego, co oczywiste w trosce o zdrowie nasze i przyszłych pokoleń. Wojna za naszą wschodnią granicą nie zatrzymała transformacji, przeciwnie, udowadnia, że kluczowe dla bezpieczeństwa tak naprawdę jest przedefiniowanie istniejącego miksu energetycznego opartego w dużej mierze o węglowodory. To też posiadanie rozbudowanego systemu odnawialnych źródeł energii wspiera niezależność od tych zagranicznych importowanych w większości surowców. Natomiast no, trzeba podkreślić, że nie można realizować tego rodzaju planów, jeśli nie weźmie się pod uwagę realiów historyczno-gospodarczych. I teraz tak, no, w Polsce po ponad 50 latach wpływów Związku Radzieckiego w naszym kraju, także na kształtowanie całego sektora energetycznego, polskie spółki są w znakomitej większości oparte na aktywach węglowych. Ponad 70%, blisko 75% energii wytwarzamy w oparciu o węgiel. I tak ukształtowanego systemu nie da się w krótkim czasie zamienić na odnawialne źródła ze względu na nie tylko wielomiliardowe nakłady inwestycyjne niezbędne, których koszt musi ponieść tak naprawdę społeczeństwo, ale także czas potrzebny do zbudowania nowych, czystych jednostek, takich jak chociażby wielkoskalowego atomu. Dlatego nie krytykując samej idei i konieczności, no bo rozumiemy, że zazielenianie się energetyki jest trendem nieodwracalnym, no jednak poddajemy w pewną wątpliwość tempo zmian, które jest narzucone przez politykę klimatyczną unijną, przez tak naprawdę państwa zachodnie, w szczególności Niemcy, które są w zupełnie innym miejscu gospodarczo, mogą sobie pozwolić na inne podejście do tej dynamiki zmian. Dlatego bez wsparcia finansowego i takiej większej elastyczności co do terminów odejścia od paliw węglowodorowych, no, polityka klimatyczna Unii będzie nierealna do zrealizowania, do przeniesienia do Polski i do pozostałych krajów Europy Środkowo-Wschodniej. Nie będzie tak naprawdę pomagać transformacji energetycznej regionu. Krótko mówiąc, transformacja energetyczna w kierunku zeroemisyjności zdecydowanie tak, ale na zasadach sprawiedliwych, uwzględniających punkt wyjścia, w poczuciu odpowiedzialności także za portfele obywateli.
Yes, and you mentioned that the war brought to Ukraine by Russia did not stop the European climate policy. However, you mentioned also the flexibility, the need of flexibility in this matter. And do you think that maybe the flexibility should consist of freezing some parts of the European climate policy, like, for example, the ETS schedule or any other part of these mechanisms?
No jak najbardziej tak. Czas wojny i kryzysu to jest taki moment, w którym trzeba wcisnąć przycisk pauzy w polityce klimatycznej. Nie tylko pod kątem wstrzymania się być może z niektórymi pracami, ale także w celu zyskania tak naprawdę czasu na refleksję co do zmiany niektórych założeń strategii klimatycznej, które w obliczu wojny no, wydają się zbyt optymistyczne, żeby nie powiedzieć naiwne. To pokazuje chociażby określenie gazu jako paliwa przejściowego, które bez zbudowania strategii w krajach zachodnich, żeby móc importować ten surowiec, no, przy dzisiejszych realiach, przerwaniu dostaw surowca z Rosji, to pokazuje, że te scenariusze były nierealne. W naszej opinii mechanizm, który powinien zostać zrewidowany natychmiast, to jest przede wszystkim system ETS. W ocenie polskiej branży energetycznej to dosyć powszechnej jest to, że właściwym byłoby nawet jego zawieszenie, albo przynajmniej zamrożenie cen uprawnień na czas wojny za wschodnią granicą. Podobnie potrzebny jest właśnie projekt rozporządzenia w sprawie wprowadzenia ceny maksymalnej gazu, o który także walczy na forum Unii Europejskiej nasze Ministerstwo Klimatu.
Thank you. I'm very glad that you have mentioned natural gas several times, because this is the topic of my next question that I would like to ask Ms. Mastantuono. And the question is, we are now after the practical stop of gas flow from Russia to Europe. And despite of the fact that Russian gas is not flowing and the price of the natural gas in the European market has fallen to the levels from the February 2022, do you think that Russia and Russian companies still have some impact, some influence on the European gas market, and how would you draw this impact?
Do I need to hear me? That's perfect. No, it's just if I need to push a button. Okay. Thank you. First of all, thank you for inviting me to a very interesting discussion, and I would fully undersigned what has been said just by the previous speaker, because we see the reality in the same view in the Czech Republic. Therefore, I really fully subscribe what you have said. And I mean, I will try to frame a bit your question, and I will be saying that, of course, like in Poland, the Czech companies, they had to struggle with the green transition and being told to switch from coal to gas. But however, now we are in the situation that we are missing the gas flows from Russia, and we're actually changing the way how it flows to the Czech Republic. We used to have the gas coming from the east. Now we have it coming from the west, and also one of the solutions was that the Czech Republic, together with the Czech energy company, bought shares in an LNG terminal in the Netherlands. So we have to adapt to the new reality that we're living in. What's now, let's say, the impact of the war and how much influence it has, maybe just a couple of numbers. End of September this year, we saw the drop of 82% of gas flows to Europe compared to the last year. So we are on a good way. I mean, the reaction of member states was very quick in terms of diversifying the suppliers. I think the fact that we still can afford it in Europe and overpay some suppliers from non-EU countries, that they could shift their supplies to Asia, they could shift it to Europe because we could afford it. I think that at least this is a good thing. But of course, we have to see how this develops. Fortunately, we don't have a cold winter for the moment. We're doing with this pretty well, and we also have plenty of gas storage. So I think we are ready for this winter.
Yes, and you mentioned a very important thing, I guess, because several years ago, the perspective of lacking the gas flow from Russia had been seen as something horrible, as a nightmare. But right now, after this almost complete stop, we are able to not only survive, but also, for example, fulfill our gas storages and prepare for the winter. And what are, in your opinion, the most important takes, the conclusions that can be taken from this crisis by the European companies, especially them that were very dependent on the Russian fuels?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm coming from a country which is very industry-based country. So industry represents like 30% of our GDP, which is usually an average like 20% in the EU. Therefore, we are very energy-intensive economy. And of course, those that are very energy-intensive, of course, they suffer the most. And the companies, they just cannot switch from one technology to another. Therefore, we see how they face the high energy prices. We saw also some savings. So in let's say concrete terms, we see that the companies, they try to deploy renewables where they can. However, if you need, for instance, in heavy industry, you need to heat with very high temperatures, like 2000 degrees. So you cannot cope with like heat pumps, which are going to 200 degrees, but you have to heat it with coal or oil or gas. But as we don't have gas, of course, we come back to coal or to oil, which is much dirtier than the gas. And here maybe we see a bit going backwards in terms of a Green Deal. And I think it has been already mentioned, that's the speed we are taking. I mean, the goals are there, but maybe in some terms we are going quicker in terms of rolling out of renewables, but at the same time where we cannot go quicker because technology doesn't allow us, we're taking a step backwards.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And my next question goes to Minister Tobiszowski. And I would like to ask about the topic that has been already mentioned in our previous panel, the nuclear energy. And do you think that the current energy crisis and the effects of the war brought by Russia will change the European stance on the nuclear energy? And will do you think that European Union will shift its policy towards this source of energy to more positive, more accepting, and do you think that maybe this ongoing crisis will be a start of a pro-nuclear European energy policy?
Bardzo istotne pytanie. Odpowiedź właściwie powinna być dość czytelna i prosta. Natomiast zanim odpowiem, dlaczego ona nie jest taka prosta, bo zadaję sobie pytanie, jak europoseł, w której części jest w Unii Europejskiej decyzja w tej sprawie, ale nie tylko w tej, ale w tej sprawie. Dlaczego? Zobaczmy, Francja, przecież bez energetyki atomowej to właściwie byśmy przesunęli ją do czasów średniowiecza. Niemcy były przeciwne i generalnie bywają przeciwne jeszcze głosy elektrowni jądrowej, chociaż pan kanclerz ostatnio, działo się to na dniach, ogłosił, że wynegocjował swoich partnerów z Partii Zielonych, że uruchamia nie dwie elektrownie, a 3. A więc wynegocjował nie uruchomienie, tylko uruchomienie 3 bloków jądrowych. A przecież niedawno jeszcze dyskutowaliśmy przy Fit for 55, jak sobie przypominam, czy dopuścimy w Europie inwestycje w elektrownię jądrową. Francja oczywiście była za. Niemcy mówiły nie. Holandia nie. No i pojawiało się pytanie, bowiem nie ukrywam, że my w Polsce głęboko rozważamy. Zresztą ostatnio była wizyta, jedna, myślę, z ostatnich ważnych w Stanach Zjednoczonych, mówiąca o tym, że już nie, że chcemy, tylko kto będzie realizował tą inwestycję. Mówimy, gdzie ona będzie. Wiem, że też prowadzone zostały rozmowy z firmą z Francji też, bo nie chodzi tylko o 1 blok, ale o więcej. I dla Polski ta decyzja i to, co pan zapytał, czy zmieni się pogląd w tej sprawie, jest bardzo ważny. Zresztą sobie dobrze przypominam wystąpienie wstępne pana prezesa z KGHM, który mówił już nie o tej energetyce jądrowej, tej dużej, blokowej, ale o tych małych elektrowniach, które gdzieś tam technologie zaczynają być dopracowywane. No i byłoby ważne, żebyśmy wiedzieli, że Europa, czyli kto? Pani Ursula von der Leyen, pan Timmermans, nie wiem, komisarz Simpson, komisarz od przemysłu z Francji. No któż powie, że tak jest? I z jednej strony odpowiedź powinna być rzeczywiście taka, że jeśli mamy kraj, który technologicznie i energetycznie jest związany jak Francja, teraz Niemcy uruchamiają swoje bloki, które zostały wyłączone, bo jest taka potrzeba, no to powinna być rzecz oczywista, że energetyka jądrowa powinna być dopuszczona jako jeden z tych źródeł energii, które za 5, za 7, 8 lat, czy za 10 ktoś do mnie powie, no ale nie, tam jest uran, trzeba go też jakoś tam, to jest niebezpieczne. Ja myślę, że tej stabilności w decyzji nam brakuje. I to sprawia, że dzisiaj, kiedy dalej tkwimy, 2050, neutralność, 2030 mamy w Fit for 55 zwiększyć ambicje, a my nie wiemy, czy osiągniemy te ambicje sprzed zwiększenia tych ambicji. Bo przecież dzisiaj konia z rzędem temu, który może w ogóle zdiagnozować, co będzie za 2-3 lata. No przecież ja myślę, że w gospodarce i w sprawach energetyki to my raczej Copperfielda nie chcemy, który będzie nam mówił o magii, czy tam wróżył nam, bo tu jest kwestia twardych danych. I zadaję sobie pytanie, bo wszyscy bardzo chętnie mówimy, osiągnijmy to, jedziemy teraz, przepraszam, tak trochę odejdę, ale jedziemy teraz do Egiptu, Europa, by mówić, że potrzebujemy ambicje, że zwiększamy cele efektywności, no i tego jest mnóstwo. Na co Indie, Indonezja mówią, no dobrze, to my też podejmiemy te wyzwania, ale dajcie nam pieniądze. No i przepraszam, no pojawia się teraz pytanie nad skutecznością Europy jako poważnego kontynentu w świecie. Bo jeśli my tracimy konkurencyjność gospodarczą ze względu na ceny, nie na wojnę, na ceny energii, na brak stabilności i my mówimy o pewnych celach, które wiemy, że właściwie są nieosiągalne. Nie umiemy doprecyzować, jak my chcemy widzieć nasz miks energetyczny, naszą suwerenność i bezpieczeństwo energetyczne Europy, poszczególnych krajów, to proszę mi powiedzieć, jak nas mają Amerykanie, ludne kraje Azji postrzegać, co my w tej Europie robimy? Jacy my jesteśmy poważni? System ETS-u. Tu już prezes słusznie zauważył. Proszę zobaczyć, ideą systemu ETS-u było to, aby jakby wymusić inwestycje proekologiczne w energetyce. A co się okazuje? Że wpuściliśmy instytucje finansowe i robią na to galaktyczne pieniądze, które powodują, że brak nam środków na inwestycje w spółkach energetycznych. No przecież to się mija z ideą i z celami, które chcemy osiągać. I teraz my w Polsce mówimy, to trzeba zawiesić, bo my chcemy iść w odnawialne źródła, my chcemy iść w offshore, my chcemy iść w atom, my chcemy iść w geotermię, my po prostu chcemy być nowocześni, chcemy skok cywilizacyjny zrobić. A tu nagle nam mówią, nie, będziesz płacił 100 euro za emisję i wyciągniemy ci pieniądze, by spółki wasze energetyczne i gospodarka nie mogła się rozwijać. No przepraszam bardzo, pani przedmówczyni przede mną też o tym wspomniała. My tracimy jako Europa konkurencyjność. Europa zawsze była silna przemysłowo, zawsze była silna technologicznie, zawsze mogła konkurować w świecie. Dzisiaj mamy ambicje, mamy daty, ale nie mamy wyliczeń i nie mamy prawdziwej diagnozy. Jest wojna, jak jest wojna, to nie można mówić o tym, że my coś będziemy osiągać, bo my nawet nie wiemy, kiedy ona się skończy. I słusznie też prezes zauważył z ENEA, gaz ma być paliwem przejściowym. Węgiel wyrzucamy, brunatny szczególnie. Wczoraj Niemcy, liderzy Europy, ścinają farmę wiatrową na złożu węgla brunatnego i rozszerzają kopalnię węgla brunatnego. No i teraz jaki to jest sygnał? My jedziemy do Egiptu, jako Europa, silny kraj Niemcy, idą w brunatny węgiel, uruchomili elektrownie węglowe, idą w jądrówkę, a wcześniej mówili, że zamknęliby jądrówkę. Nagle mówią o solidarności gazowej, a z drugiej strony jakieś cele, które właściwie, tak szczerze powiedziawszy, moglibyśmy dać magom do oceny, na ile jest coś realne. Ja pokazuję, że w Europie brakuje nam otrzeźwienia i zredukowania, ja nie chcę powiedzieć, że celów, ale dat. Bo to, że chcemy troszczyć się o środowisko, że chcemy iść w zielone, że chcemy iść w odnawialne źródła, to jest poza dyskusją. Tylko my musimy być realni, bo jesteśmy za poważnym kontynentem. I na razie tyle.
Thank you. And you said that there is a lack of some clear vision here in Europe, and also you mentioned in the very beginning of your answer that there was some dispute going on in the European Union regarding the nuclear energy, and this dispute, this whole division, was very similar to the division that has also occurred among the member states, which was referring to the stance on Russia and Russian energy. And do you think that after this energy crisis, we hope that Ukraine will soon win the war and Russia will be thrown out from the Ukrainian territories? But do you think that after this, with a possible political change of the regime in Russia, do you think that there may be some party of the member states that will be going towards some kind of a reset in the terms of energy with the Russian companies, and that there are some member states that will be keen on going back to the energy cooperation with the Russian state?
No, ważne i trudne pytanie i istotne. Często mówimy Putin. To prawda, szef, prezydent. Natomiast myślę, że jest to uproszczenie. Mamy w Rosji pewną mentalność. I to, że do niedawna w Rosji było 80% poparcia agresji Rosji na Ukrainę, to znaczy się, że jest to głębszy problem. I dlatego nie należałoby zakładać, bo my nie wiemy jeszcze, kiedy się wojna skończy, na jakich warunkach, co się wydarzy. To jest dzisiaj wróżenie z fusów. Oby się skończyło jak najszybciej, bo to jest dramat, to nie ma o czym rozmawiać. Ale Europa powinna wyciągnąć głębsze wnioski. Bo jaki my mamy pewność, że po tym rządzie, po Putinie przyjdzie ktoś inny i nam będzie wtedy w Europie powiedzieć, tak, już jest ktoś inny, robimy z nim biznes. I znowu się będziemy wiązać, ale przecież Putin był przyjmowany na salonach. To był przecież światowiec. To był człowiek, który pokazywał, że można silny kraj jak Rosja zawiązywać wszystkie kontrakty. Prawa człowieka będą przestrzegane. Że przecież za jego rządów Rosja jest solidnym partnerem. I tak też nas przekonywano w Polsce, że no my tak w Polsce to tak, no bo macie taką historię i wy to jesteście tacy niepokorni. A dziś wiemy, że myśmy w Polsce słusznie diagnozowali. I oczywiście, że słyszy się w wielu miejscach Europy, no dobrze by było, gdyby ten rząd odszedł. Ale jeśli mówimy o czymś głębszym, może o pewnych uwarunkowaniach,
Dobrze by było,
że ktoś jest Europejczykiem, wyrastał z innej kultury łacińskiej, greckiej, kultury rzymskiej, a więc prawo własności, prawo państwa, prawo tworzenia demokracji greckiej i łacińskie godność człowieka, a z drugiej strony mamy troszkę inną postawę, inne wpływy cywilizacyjne. I zauważmy, że dotrzymywanie umów w jednych części świata ma znaczenie, a w innych jest trochę prawo siły. I ja myślę, że bardzo ważne jest, żeby mieć świadomość, że to nie jest kwestia tylko Putina, to jest problem głębszy. I dlatego jak pan pyta, czy przy tym jak ustanie wojna należymy robić reset, przestrzegałbym do szybkich diagnoz i do planowania. My budujmy konstrukcję w Europie tak, jakbyśmy Rosji nie potrzebowali. To będzie najistotniejsze, bo wchodzenie do paszczy ponownie może grozić drugim przymknięciem. I stąd uważam, że trzeba zrobić reset i ten reset dotyczący energetyki i kwestii gospodarczej szerzej i budować z innymi krajami, które gwarantują nasz system wartości. Dziękuję.
Thank you. Thank you for these answers. And my next question that goes to Ms. Rybak will somehow refer to what we have heard previously. And I would like to ask about the impact of the energy crisis on the production of European companies. Do you think that this impact would have been smaller if the European energy policy, the European climate policy would look like some different, especially in regard to what Minister Tobiszowski said, which are fields like ETS system?
It's a difficult question.
No.
So I'll start maybe with explaining what CEPI stands for and give you a little bit of background of where we are coming from and why energy is so important to what we do. So CEPI is a confederation of European paper industries. And to produce paper, we need a lot of heat to dry it, and that takes a lot of energy. So basically, on the one hand, we take a lot of energy and heat, and on the other side, we need a lot of electricity to run the machines that go 24/7. Which means that in the situation that we're facing now, we're exposed on both fronts, on the gas price and on the electricity price. Often we're being victim of our own success. We're one of the biggest producers and users of renewable energy. 61% of our energy needs is met with sustainable biomass. But still, 33% of our energy mix across the board, so we're talking about countries from Spain, Italy, through France, Germany, Poland, through the Nordics, comes from natural gas. And what we see right now, how companies are dealing with the exposure to those skyrocketing prices, is that first of all, it's a reduction of production. And that's quite worrying, especially that our products are essential to our daily lives. You might remember the beginning of the COVID crisis when we were all looking for toilet paper. Well, then we didn't really stop the production as an industry, but now we're exposed to closing temporarily our production. Some of them, we get the signals of permanent closures and filing for bankruptcy. And something that we already heard today is losing the competitiveness. So for some of those mills and for some of those installations, what we're going to see is if they close temporarily, they might never open again. And that's the biggest problem in the crisis that we face. And it's very difficult to say what would have been different if it was not for the war. Because the high energy prices, we've been observing that since summer last year, and we've been raising the concerns since summer last year, and we already saw some first movement on the policy side in this case. But what was really critical is the start of the war and the consequences of that. And what we see right now, it's something that was mentioned before, is lack of certainty. And lack of certainty for maintaining the operations today, but lack of certainty for the investments for the future. So something that we're, as an industry, we're quite committed to is climate neutrality and reaching this by 2050. But now, with the double exposure to the ETS prices, to the high energy prices, the competitiveness of our industry is endangered, and by default, investments as well.
Thank you. And you said about uncertainty and some difficulties in looking towards the future because of the fact that we have a war going on the border of European Union. And so my next question to you is, do you think that the ongoing situation will affect the decarbonization plans brought by the European Union, or maybe is affecting already?
I would say that it is affecting the decarbonization plans in the sense that what we wanted to achieve is to decarbonize, but not deindustrialize. And now, even though we're going to see multiple companies that haven't done energy efficiency measures, in our industry, it's one of the core of investments is in energy efficiency. Now we're trying to go even further in a very short term. What is going to be more challenging is to look at the switching to renewable energy, especially when we see that there are less and less power purchase agreements being signed, and the permitting process for renewable projects is not the shortest one. So there is still room for maneuver, and I think that there is still a willingness to go further for self-sufficiency, to tap more into energy efficiency, but it's impossible to do if the companies don't get the support that they need now. So what we see at the national level, even though we see the state aid framework being revised right now, there is a lot of capacity at the national level to go very fast and support the companies now. And then the next question is also going to be the budget of member states to be able to support energy-intensive industries.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And the next question that will go to Mr. Sprzączak will be quite similar to the previous one, but it will be more specific. And I would like to ask about the provisions of the Fit for 55 package. Do you think that realization of this package is still possible, taking into account the new circumstances that were brought by Russia to the whole of the European Union?
Once more, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for that question. Thanks for inviting me here. I'm sorry that Minister Czetwertyński couldn't attend today, but I hope to fill his shoes. Thank you for that question regarding Fit for 55. It's a tough question. I would maybe change it a little bit, because I think that more important part is whether Fit for 55 will be influenced by the crisis, and whether it will somehow acknowledge the challenges that European Union now has with current climate and energy policy that it's pursuing. Because in the short term, we can see with the crisis and with the energy prices that we need all the energy sources that we can get. We have very high energy and commodity prices, the natural gas prices, coal prices, and I think that EU should take into account that we have to revise the policy, we have to loosen it a little bit, and I think that Ms. Rybak, Mr. Majewski also said about it, that we need somehow, we cannot be picky, and we need all the energy that we can get. So we need wartime solutions. So what President Majewski said about ETS or Minister Tobiszowski, I fully concur with that, because we need competitiveness, and I think that also the strategy needs to take into account all possibilities rather than going only in one direction. For example, during the energy crisis, Polish coal-fired power plants exported energy to Western Europe, and nobody asked about the color of this power. Nobody really cared, because it was a crisis situation and everybody needed as much available power as possible. So yet we still want to get rid of these capacities, even though with current macroeconomics, it's not really sure. And with the current status of natural gas as a transition fuel, there's no really good answer with what we will supplement it. Because of course, the renewables will be at the core of the policy, and nobody wants to question that, but we have to answer ourselves a question, what we will use when it will not be available. If the coal is not, I don't know, banned word in Brussels, if natural gas has big question mark whether it can be perceived as a transitional fuel, I think that we have to somehow revise, and I think that Fit for 55 has to take into account the circumstances that occurred during last few months or last 9 months since the Russian aggression on Ukraine, and take this into consideration. For example, taxonomy, do no significant harm criteria, and the stance towards waste to energy plants. I think that exporting high calorific waste abroad without any control, rather than turning it into energy in the safe and controlled environment with all the filters that we can have under the regulation and under the EU umbrella of legislation, is simply something that we cannot afford to. So I think that we should take a short and mid-term measure in order to tackle this crisis. I think that we need to do whatever we can to ease not only the industry, but also the end consumers of energy in Europe. And I think that Fit for 55 should take into account also this crisis scenarios and the crisis circumstances that we can hear it now, but I think that the European energy market should adapt to that. So I think that it should be more flexible rather than only one route oriented. Yeah. Then we will, of course, need a discussion about new market design in order to avoid such peaks as we observed recently. But I think that the legislation will be on its way.
Thank you. And you mentioned crisis scenarios, and I would like you to present some crisis scenarios for the upcoming winter months. My question is, what do you think are the biggest challenges or threats in the energy field that we may encounter during the upcoming winter?
I think that there are still few ahead of us. We heard that I think Ms. Kanev said that we are quite prepared because the storages are full of natural gas. Of course, this is true, but we have to take into consideration that currently the prices of natural gas are low on the spot market, but when we look at the short, maybe mid-term and long-term market for the end of the winter and for the next season, it's still quite high. So we need to take this into consideration, this uncertainty about the weather, about the demand on the European market. So, of course, gas is one of the question marks that is still there, because for the short-term solutions, we are safe. There is a lot of gas in the European Union. There is a lot of LNG around European Union, and we can see the signals to political signals and economic signals that led to this situation. So this is very good thing that shows us that European countries and Europe itself, European Union, gave the right signals in order to tackle crisis, and we are capable of ditching Russia and ditching Gazprom in terms of natural gas. So that's very good, but of course we cannot say that everything is done, because this is a chain of events, and the high price of natural gas will lead to high prices of electricity. This will lead to losing the competitiveness, and what Ms. Rybak said about the energy intensive industry and their ability to compete and to sell in this kind of economy is something that is crucial, because it will have very long consequences. So we have to take this into consideration. But what I would like to say is that I think that European solutions are very much gas oriented, and I think that they should take into account national specificity, because of for example, in Poland, there is a big discussion about coal and the prices of coal. And for example, the temporary framework for state aid that were published because of the aggression of Russian Federation on Ukraine was very much gas-oriented. Poland liked to add some specific solutions, for example, for coal market, for coal-fired power plants, for district heating systems, because it's something that is very important for us. And, you know, it wasn't fully taken into consideration. So I think that we need to look at the crisis more broadly, because natural gas is not the only obstacle. But the legislation is on. The crisis legislation on the European level and on national level, and the ways to how to tackle the energy crisis are underway. Of course, the natural gas price cap that is being discussed, I think it's just around the corner. So hopefully it will materialize to help both the industry and the end consumers pretty soon. So fingers crossed for that. And hopefully we will be able to go through the winter with relatively not such a great damages to our economy.
Thank you. I totally agree with you that there is a need and a room for a more energy unity in energy variety approach here in European Union. But thank you once again for your answer. And that was the last question of our panel, brought by me. But I look on the organizer if we do have some time for questions from the audience. And if there are any questions, please raise your hand. I see one over there.
Thank you. Hi, I'm a business consultant and concerned citizen. My question here, I've been here all day, and I've heard a lot about, potential nuclear solutions, or a thing that would be good for the economy, for businesses. And there's two things that I didn't hear and that I would like to talk about here. First one is the people. It's good to think about the economy, but I don't really hear is in Europe people, really. So let's go back to the basics and to really what we can do as an industry and as a European Union and as governments for the people living. And second, we talk about shortages and how to fill that gap, knowing that we are now in a world where there's 5G, where there's Industry 4.0. So that gap is not going to go lower, it's gonna grow exponentially. And I think that maybe those two things could be a solution as well, is that we talk about in other spaces about decentralization a lot with blockchain and with empowering people. And I think that in energy there are talks about decentralized grids and giving potential communities a power to kind of organize themselves together. And don't you think that this could be a solution to help people, but as well help the industry be able to take a breather and have help for empowered people that would maybe then also be more responsible or more aware of their consumption, and so help not only close that gap, but fill in the coming gaps that will arrive from the Industry 4.0. Thank you.
Thank you. And who's going to answer that?
Maybe I can address that. So I already mentioned that our industry is connected with people on a very daily basis and different value chains. But maybe another way where our industry is contributing to also well-being of people is that in many of the facilities that we have and where it is possible, we sell heat to district heating. So you would have places that the entire town is dependent on waste heat from our mills. And once we're closing the mill, this is going to be threatened. Another way where our mills are contributing to also helping people is through providing wastewater treatment services. So it's not only about treating the water that we use in our mills, but also providing the same service for the community around it. So we're very much intertwined with the communities that are surrounding the mills. And it is true that this decentralized idea of producing energy is also embedded in some of the business models that we have. And I'm not sure if we're talking about the same thing, but it is true that in the future we will need more electricity. So with the solutions that we see in the decarbonization and some of the breakthrough technologies, we will need more energy. And it is true that it's going to be a difficult balance between energy efficiency gains and the tough reality that we will need more electricity in the future.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? If not, thank you for your attention. Thank you for sharing with your knowledge and takes on our energy crisis. Ladies and gentlemen, I will give now the floor to the organizer.
Thank you very much for discussion. Our conference came to its end. Thank you for being us here in Brussels and online. Our apologies for technical interruptions. However, we are looking for feedback and invite you to contact us anytime. Thank you for your attention for the whole day. And for those who would like to continue the debate, we've planned networking opportunity straight after the event outside. Thank you very much.